Good day and welcome back to The Secret Solved. This is a program where we look at the book The Secret by Byron Price and try to come up with ideas concerning what the authors and artists were up to back in the 1980s. Today's discussion is going to be about the solved puzzle in Chicago, where I attempt to add additional detail to the information that has been presented about this location as the solved location. And so, without further delay, let's just kind of get into the fling of things. I usually start these programs by talking about the image itself and some of the detail. And I've been using the PB Works images because they have this nice scale setup where you can pinpoint particular sections of the item. Okay, so in general, at the D4 location, people have identified the Bowman, if you will. This water tower over in the 7DCE section has been identified. I don't think too many people have actually talked about these blue roofs and why these tops of all these structures are blue. And I think the simple answer to that is because the blue structure that has a roof on it, or the structure that has a blue roof on it adjacent to the park is the Metropolitan Building. And this was called the Britannica Tower. It was called a number of things, but there is this blue beehive light structure that is on top of that building. And I think that if you understand that the artists are trying to draw your attention to that particular building in the city, that will help. We've had discussions about this 5GH white stone that sits on this railing. We've had several discussions about that. People have put videos up concerning that area of this puzzle, so I'm not going to discuss that much. It's been identified. The windmill coordinates in the windmill again. The but the whole theme of wind seems to be introduced into this with basically the wind, several types of wind collecting devices, whether it be a windmill, whether it be the one on top of the structure on the right hand, or the weather vane, or the other weather vane. And so I think that was to kind of give us the idea that this is the Windy City. All of those details have been pointed out. You've got several instances of tunnels in this, if you will. Uh, I think actually that chimney on 7E is actually a railroad spike. And instead of it being a chimney, I think that's actually a railroad spike. So anyway, there's more indication there that you could have some terrain reference. If you look at these tunnels, there's several tunnels here. The boat dock winching service can be explained a little bit later on and why those are part of the image. Uh, there's an airplane type structure over here in the L and the M area. Nine, it's the medallion kind of uh, dangling from the ear. And I don't think anybody's really explained that in much detail, but I think that actually could possibly be a reference to some boats, canoes, because if you turn each of those upside down, you've got basically the whole of a boat. Uh, so the other thing that could represent is if you look at the structure in there, it's kind of like an airplane, and there's a artistic sculpture uh, of a dinosaur trying to fly by a guy by the name of Alexander Cauldron in the park. That's also could signify the fountain that is in Grant Park, uh, but the structure of that fountain isn't exactly like that. Uh, so you've got the lesions on the face, the smallpox or whatever it is. The eye has this glasses. There's a hint of a pair of frame of glasses on this, and this always has kind of confused me because Abraham Lincoln would have died before he ever needed a monocle or needed glasses. And so I think that maybe you can explain this image figure better if you decide it's somebody else other than Lincoln. And you've got this large boot nose. The nose is in the shape of a boot. And you kind of have a stylized A over here on the other earring. But actually, if you look closely at that other earring and you stare down the two lines, it's actually a railroad track. So if you just focus on the earring that's at the M and N location over in the two area, and you stare down the actual two straight lines, you start to see that that's actually a railroad uh, tunnel. And so parallel lines that become closer together always form that. And so, again, another instance of railroading. So if you look at the head of this figure, you've got something sticking in the top of it. At the J, let's say the J6 location, that can be explained if we look at a couple of ideas. And then this garment on top of the head, it looks like a petticoat, a girdle, if you will. And so, if you know a little bit more about your history, you'll know about the petticoat affair. The big ear just is the gossip. But if you actually look at this structure that's above the ear, that's kind of got that arch shape to it, and then the little doorway looking through it, it does actually give you that base that's around the fountain, or not the fountain, the seat of Lincoln. That actually does give you that actual uh, structure, that wall, if you will, that's around the seat of Lincoln. But the problem with that is if you're approaching the stone, you're going backwards. Because that structure is not is the stone would have to be at another location. But if you go from the ear hole through that little doorway, and then you follow that up in the direction that you would be going from that uh, wall around the Lincoln, you would actually get to this white stone sitting on the railing. And so directionally, that could be correct. Uh, and the problem is the lady pouring the water is actually a fountain that's north of where the treasure was found. And so you can't really orient the items that are in the picture to get to the location. But the lady pouring the water, that's the Fountain of the Lakes. I think that's been pretty well identified. But if you look at the wing, I think that one wing that's going up from the Fountain of the Lakes, it looks like a train. It looks like a double decker train to me. Uh, so I think the one wing there might actually be a train. It could be a fish though, because it's kind of got like an eye in it, and then like a bottom. If you, I don't know. I think it's a train though. All right, so we talked a little bit about. So we got a wrinkled appearance. So somebody's old. It's not like they're young and got assassinated and they died young. It's an old figure because they have wrinkles. So I don't know how this guy could be a seated Lincoln because he never got old enough to get these wrinkles. Um, hmm. Yeah, I don't know why you guys didn't think about that when you made your solve. So he's also got this wrinkly appearance in the neck area as well. Okay, so moving on down to the collar. So you've got the stone, obviously, and then you've got, the loop. So the loop kind of tells you it's in the grand loop area, if you will. So you've got the collar, and under in the purple, between the two purple, I see a whole bunch of twos. I see 222. I see 222. I see 222. I see 222. I see twos in there. Oh, a whole bunch of twos in there. And uh, and then over here on the shoulder, you have a cotton bowl. Like, hey, I'm a cotton farmer. I'm from the South. And then you've either got the judge's robe or the minister's robe. And it could be either one. So then, if you get down into the other collar in the four area in the N and the O, I see a pair of lips on that collar, like kissing the collar. Like, maybe I don't know why you're kissing somebody on the neck collar, but there's some kissing going on because there's a pair of lips sitting there on that collar. Most definitely a pair of kissing lips there. I don't see any I don't see any indication of 13 trees or a need to count a number of trees. I don't see anything in here where you would count anything to get to a number of trees. I mean, you can start counting windows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and see if that adds up to the right number. Um, but you just don't count uh, to get to that. So anyway, those are some of the things that I see in the image myself. I might not have mentioned everything that other people have pointed out, but let's, if you will, just for a minute, accept the possibility that this is not Abraham Lincoln because of the glasses, the lesions on the face, the oldness of the neck area, and explore a few different ideas with me, if you will. So I've added a couple of links in here that you can look at. Um, but I just in general think that if you reevaluate this image, you might think that this image figure could be something, other than Abraham Lincoln. And so I'm suggesting that our image figure is Andrew Jackson. And if you go look at the image of Andrew Jackson, that is well known on Wikipedia, of him wearing this neck. Okay, so the next thing to point out is that the neck collar of the period in which Andrew Jackson uh, existed and the time in which Lincoln existed are different. And I don't think there are any photographs or any known documentation showing uh, our friend Mr. Lincoln wearing such a neck collar as Andrew Jackson is wearing in the picture on Wikipedia. Um, and the age of the man certainly shows up in this, right? And I don't remember what color eyes. I don't know what color eyes Abraham Lincoln has. I don't know if they're blue. I know that Andrew Jackson probably has blue eyes. But anyway, so look at the collar, and you'll see that Andrew Jackson lost his mother to cholera. Get it? Cholera, and his brother to smallpox. Okay, he himself had smallpox. He was in a prison. Him and his brother got exchanged. They got out of prison. His mom nursed him back to health. But the reason you have the detail on the collar, and also have the pox on the face, is because you're talking about somebody that actually had smallpox. Um, and so you can look at the smallpox lesions. Is there any evidence that Abraham Lincoln had smallpox? Any at all? So Andrew Jackson liked to duel. In fact, he was involved in several duels, and he got sliced in the head. Well, if you look at the head of the image figure, you've got this big old slice in it, right? You got the building coming out of the top of the head, as if you got sliced in the head. And so that odd garment on his head is a petticoat. Uh, and the ear is representing the gossip, because he was involved in the petticoat affair. And this took up most of his time as president. And there's a whole thing about his cabinet, having problems with his cabinet, having to address problems with them instead of actually governing. So the robe itself could either be a judge's robe or a minister's robe, because for Jackson, uh, he was a lawyer, and he appointed, judges. He appointed like 6 or 8 judges to the Supreme Court. I don't know how many judges Lincoln appointed, but the other thing he did is he made an executive order to expand the court by 2 members, from 7 to 9 as part of his presidency. But it could be a minister's robe, as his mother sent him to school to become a minister, but he was a little bit too rambunctious for that. So another interesting aspect of the image is the nose. It looks like a shiny boot to me. Jackson nearly died in prison because he refused to shine the boot of a British soldier. And so if you take a look at some flat front boots, that the British soldiers would have worn, and you look at the flat front face of this nose, uh, you get the idea that, damn, that nose does look like a flat front boot, doesn't it? All right, so the next thing is that Jackson also had a number of years farming and acting as a plantation owner. And if you look at the plant of the blue plant that's on the shoulder, that's actually some cotton. That is a cotton boll, if you will. So there's the cotton farmer plantation. If you look at the folds in the neck, and that this could also be the tilling of the ground that uh, was done. So the crane and boats is a possible link to Lincoln, but there's also a link to Jackson. Uh, the assembly to the uh, left, the hoop looks like an A, and the hook is in the form of a J. Hmm, hmm, Andrew Jackson. And then if you look at the jack on the other side, you have another J, and then you have another J in the boat as well. Uh, Jefferson has a lot to do with the Lewis and Clark expedition and the United States exploring expedition. And so these are two things that happened during Jackson's presidency and could indicate the boats that were launched off. So I am I'm pretty adamant or exacting that I think that this could be explained. So I put a link into the Metropolitan Tower because if you look at the roof structure and if you look at this blue appearance at the top of the Metropolitan Tower and the beehive light structure, you'll be able to come to an easy assumption that maybe this is something that should be important to the puzzle because you can see it from the treasure ground. And all those roofs were blue. I mean, did the guy just not have any colored ink? It was Palancar so poor when he was working on this that the only color of ink that he had when he was wanting to paint this puzzle was blue. And the only place he used it was on the top of these buildings. I just don't know. So this building was designed by Graham Anderson, Probst, and White. Uh, and I don't know if it's important as to who those people were, but it was named the Strauss Building when it was completed in 1924. And it was the first building in Chicago with 30 or more floors. So in 1924, this was the tallest building, not the Sears Tower. Okay. And so in 1980, this whole buzz about the tallest building, where's the tallest building? And I remember somebody bragging about coming back in like 1982 as having been at the top floor of the Sears Tower, which I think there was this rivalry between a building in New York and this building at the time. Now there's buildings taller in other places around the world. But anyway, and so uh, it was the tallest building at the time. So the Strauss Building and the Chicago Temple Building were the first to take advantage of an ordinance that allowed these taller buildings to be built. This was also one time called the Continental Insurance Company Building, and later the Continental um, Building. From 1980, it was also called the Britannica Building after the Encyclopedia Britannica. And the 1980 iteration of this probably makes the most sense in terms of the puzzle, because I think Byron tries to point you into the book area and book binding because he was a publisher. So anyway, so uh, okay, so just beneath the beehive are four Carillon bells ranging in weight from 1,500 to 7,000 pounds. And these are used until it was restored in 79 for the Chicago visit of John Paul. So there's a bell, let's say there's a bell ringing aspect to this. And I don't know why I would want to point that out, other than the fact that if you go back to the image with the windmill, uh, there's bell number one. You go back to the tower with the in the very middle. Oh, there's another bell. Oh, gee, in the 5C, that's a huge bell on that one. And then over in the 4C area, oh, there's another bell. Oh, FG3, there's another bell. Oh, G in the 6GH, there's another bell. And pouring the water is, of course, a Tinker Bell, if you will. Okay, so why would you have hanging things in here? Because you got to have a clapper in every bell. You know, you got to have something to ring the bell. Okay, so I've had a little bit of fun with that, but the point I'm making here is that there's bells in this image, and there's bells on the top of the building. And if you look at the top of the Metropolitan Building, you might get a little additional information. So anyway, the original owner of the Metropolitan was S.W. Strauss and Company, a dealer of investment bonds and one of the leading financiers for major real estate in Chicago during the 19th century. The tower's crown has many symbols or characteristics the company wanted to portray. The pyramid symbolizes longevity and permanence. Oh, pyramid. Oh, pyramids. Oh God, let me go back to the image again. I don't know how I could miss this earlier. Oh, wow. That kind of looks like a pyramid. Maybe that's a pyramid, not a bell. Oh, maybe that's a pyramid. Oh God, that's a pyramid. How could I miss those pyramids? Oh, oh well. It's not that important that I missed the pyramids. Um, but anyway, the pyramid is supported by four bisons, a traditional symbol for the American West. Well, we haven't found the bisons yet in the back of the book, nor have we found them on the ground. But I'm betting at some point in the future we will find the bisons. Strauss was, oh, and we haven't found Levi Strauss yet either, but he could have went to San Francisco and made some jeans. Strauss was hoping to use these symbols to install trust in their customers, to reassure them that their investments would be handled actively and carefully by an institution that can be trusted over the long term. Ironically, the firm failed during the Great Compression and closed fewer than 10 years after the lightning beacon was installed. So the Art Institute's a couple blocks away. The bus lines close. So anyway, they then show a picture here at the bottom of the relative buildings. But anyway, that's the Metropolitan Tower. So in 1972, a Chicago commuter train crashed. A collision between two commuter trains in Chicago occurred during a cloudy morning rush hour on October 30, 1972. It was the worst such crash in Chicago's history. Illinois Gulf Central train, number 416, and this is why they're shoving that train and the train number down your ass, because they know, the creators of the poem know, that this Chicago puzzle is partially about this train crash. Anyway, it made the newly purchased Highliners. So if you go back to that image again and you look at the train that's coming out of the wing, the Highliner overshot the 27th Street station of what is now the Metro Electric Line, and the engineer asked and received permission from the train's conductor to back the train to the platform. Beep, beep, beep. Train 416 passed the automatic block signals, which cleared express train 720, made up of more heavily constructed single-level cars to continue at full speed on the same track. The engineers, the express train, did not see the bi-level train backing up till it was too late. When the trains collided, the front car of the express train telescoped the rear of the bi-level train, killing 45 people and injuring 332. Well, the death toll could have been higher, but the accident occurred near Michael Reese Hospital uh, and Mercy Hospital. So, thankfully, just as just as Andrew Jackson was nursed back to his health, so too were these passengers on the train. Because if you read about Andrew Jackson, and after Andrew Jackson got released from the prison camp, his mom suddenly decided she wanted to become a nurse. So there's a flying dragon, a stable. Don't stay parked on the track. Don't be stable. It's in Grant Park here behind the Art Institute building, I think. Anyway, and it was done by Alexander, and I think this is important because I think this is a part of the solve. I don't think people have mentioned it yet, but this dragon, if you will, this stable dragon that wants to fly but can't because it's attached to the ground as a statue, was designed by Alexander Calder. And it's amazing how Byron and his author group likes to find himself a nice Jewish boy. And so Alexander Sandy Calder was born in Lawton, Pennsylvania. His birthday remains a source of confusion. Okay, so Calder's birthday is a source of confusion. And so is actually the birth date of Andrew Jackson, because Andrew Jackson's father died before he was even born. In this case, his birthday is just a mystery. Uh, so, so his birthday is kind of a mystery. Uh, his mother was a Jewish and German descent. His father was a Calvinist and of Scottish descent. Now, of course, old Andrew Jackson is full time Scottish, by the way. So anyway, he's a Scot man. But Calder himself never practiced any religion. Okay, Calder's grandfather was another sculptor, Alexander Milne Calder, and was born in Scotland and came to Philadelphia. Okay, so I just wanted to point out Calder has this statue, and the statue is in. Um, but during the time of the 80s, 70s, and 80s, leading up to, he had a huge expedition. This guy had a huge exhibit in Chicago, and they gave him the keys to the city. They declared a day for him in Chicago. Uh, he's considered one of the, but at the time he was putting out airplanes. Uh, he had a South American themed design applied to a Braniff Douglas DC 862 at the Miami airport. There's a picture of it if you look at the bio on him. But the important thing is that he was, at the time, an artist in demand in the 70s. He had done this artwork on cars, and uh, he did some other theatrical productions with the Roman Opera House. He did the drama Socrate. Uh, and so I think what you get out of this is perhaps some links to the other puzzles. I will let you read the whole entire article about him, but so within the search area here, you have the Flying Dragon. It was installed in 1975, shortly before the book came out, a few years, and it's installed on the grounds of the Art Institute of Chicago. And I'm not going to say for a fact that this could be your rail, in other words, your flightless bird, because this guy was known for doing motion type art that like the wind would move it and stuff like that. But I'm just saying that. I want you to know what a rail is before we start reading the verse. So a rail is a flightless bird. Some rails actually can fly, but ones that are on an island for a long period of time tend to become flightless. The non-flying Corsican blue tits. Uh, so there's a Corsican called blue tits. They exhibit aggression and reduced territorial defense behaviors than do their mainland European counterparts. But this tolerance may be too limited to close relatives. Okay, so anyway, there's the behavior of the bird. Um, it's kind of interesting the breeding and reproduction habits of the flightless birds. These flightless birds are thought to be monogamous, although polygamy and polyandry have been reported. Well, certainly in the Andrew Jackson White House, there was plenty polyandry and polygamy involved. So anyway, uh, yeah. Uh, so anyway, just pointing out the bird's behavior similar to Andrew Jackson's White House. Okay, well, let's just get on with talking a little bit more about. So right now I'm going to pull up the Wikipedia on Andrew Jackson. I think I highlighted the most of them, but I do want to point out if you go to the Wikipedia article and look at Andrew Jackson, go look at the portrait of Jackson's wife, Rachel, uh, that was done by Ralph Elaser Whiteside Earl. It's now housed at the Hermitage in Nashville. So there's a portrait of Rachel. And look at this strange appearing garment on Rachel's head. I mean, it's like, what's on your head, Rachel? What is that on your head, Rachel? Okay, well, anyway. We talked about the duels with the slashing head. Back in the book talks a lot about the War of 1812. Jackson's a central figure. Everybody thinks there's one in New Orleans. Well, Andrew Jackson was in the Battle of New Orleans. Nobody wants to believe my solve that has to do with the Seminole Indians and has to do with the Seminoles, the Florida State Seminoles, and how these puzzles don't work together. But Andrew Jackson was in the first Seminole War. He had a lot to do with the repatriation of the American Indians. So here's an interesting one. In the Panic of 1819, the United States' first prolonged financial depression caused Congress to reduce the military size and abolish Jackson's generalship. In compensation, at the time, Monroe was president. And later on, you'll discover how important Mr. Monroe is to the secret. Anyway, he made him the first territorial governor of Florida in 1821. So here's good old Andrew Jackson giving us a link to Florida. And I don't even care if you don't believe in my Seminole, in my Tallahassee, Florida ideas, and you just want to find a reason why the War of 1812, the reason Andrew Jackson, all of the back of the book, the information you're not considering is important, because if you do like Florida, this gives you another reason to like Florida because it's part of the election of 1824. Okay, so Rachel Jackson died in 1828, shortly after the election of 1824. So he was nominated by the president of the Tennessee legislature. In the election of 1828, Andrew Jackson was accused of being the son of an English prostitute and a mulatto, and he was labeled as a slave trader who trafficked in human flesh. A series of pamphlets known as the Coffin Handbills. The Coffin Handbills? Well, let's just go back to the coffins on Copp's Hill. Well, accused him of having murdered 18 white men, including the soldiers he had executed for desertion, and allegedly that he stabbed a man in the back with his cane. Oh, God, just don't put another walking cane in an image for me, please, because I might think that image is about Andrew Jackson. They stated that he had intentionally massacred Native Americans, women, and children in the Battle of Horseshoe Bend ate the bodies of Native Americans he killed in battle. Okay, well, we already know that Michael Rockefeller had the opposite happen to him because the natives of the Asmat tribe ate him. I don't make this stuff up. I just repeat the history and link it together, just like they did in The Secret. Uh, Guess what? You won't believe this. They stated that he had intentionally massacred Native American women and children at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, ate the bodies of Native Americans, and ate the bodies that he killed in battle, and threatened to cut off the ears of congressmen who questioned his behavior during the First Seminole War. Wow, I'm so glad that ear is just rightly, prominently hanging out there. So if good old Andrew Jackson wanted to grab the top of it and start slicing, I mean, after all, the maitre demon might have a knife available in that restaurant. He could come right over and slice that ear off. Why does corny appear as an ear of corn in the back of the book? And being corny as Kansas. Jackson and Rachel were accused of adultery for living together before her divorce was finalized, and Rachel heard about the accusation. She had been under stress throughout the election, and just as Jackson was preparing to head to Washington for his inauguration, she fell ill. She did not live to see her husband become president, dying of stroke or heart attack a few days later. Jackson believed that the abuse from Adams' supporters had hastened her death, stating at her funeral, "May God Almighty forgive her murderers, as I know she forgave them. I never can." And so he won the 1828 election and became president in 1829 and served until 1837, a two-termer. Okay, so the spoils system, the Petticoat Affair, the Indian Removal Act, kind of talked about some of these things. The nullification crisis is another thing. Okay, so the bank veto. So basically, he also had a lot to do with the having to have any land that was purchased paid for in specie. In other words, there's going to be no payment on credit. You have to actually have the gold and silver, and or otherwise have hard money. Well, now when I go back and look at the image figure a little bit more, I'm starting to wonder if that isn't just a specie coming from the ear, if that's just not like a coin, and the ring over here is silver. Oh, why is the one silver earring and the other gold? Silver and gold is the only form of payment that's going to be allowed. Oh, okay, I see now. You're trying to point that out by having these coins, silver shaped, round objects, because of the silver and gold thing. Okay, I gotcha. Makes sense to me. So there was again this whole issue of having to have a coinage. There's an assassination attempt. Okay, this will come into play later when you look at another puzzle and you look at Lawrence of Arabia and you look at Lawrence and you look at another Lawrence. There's several Lawrences, maybe because one of the puzzles is in the St. Lawrence Seaway. And that's why everything kind of melds together. So anyway, Jackson was first president to be subject to both a physical assault and assassination attempt. I remember back when when I talked about Milwaukee, how the president was staying in the hotel where the Hyatt now resides, and he actually got shot. We're talking about Roosevelt. So Roosevelt actually got shot. Then he went and gave a speech, and then he then decided, oh, damn, I got shot worse than I thought. Well, here's another president that got shot or attempted. So on 1833, Robert B. Randolph, and when you look later on, you're going to find Randolph Hearst, excuse me, Randolph Hearst, the publisher. There's the back of the book stories about Randolph Hearst and him being a paper magnate, owning all these papers, and they were on the West Coast. Maybe one of them was in San Francisco. Anyway, so he struck Jackson in the face with his hand because Jackson had ordered Randolph's dismissal from the Navy for embezzlement. Jackson declined to press charges. Oh, maybe that explains why his face is red on one side. While Jackson was leaving the United States Capitol on January 30th, 1835, Richard Lawrence, an unemployed house painter from England. Oh, you guys did get it right. There is somebody from England in this. It's just not Lincoln. It's Dick Lawrence. He aimed a pistol at him and misfired. Lawrence pulled out a second pistol, which also misfired. Okay, if you're going to attempt to assassinate somebody, you might want to test fire your weapons. I don't know if he had swam maybe across some water to get to the assassination attempt and his guns got wet. Or maybe it was a rainy day. I don't know. Jackson then attacked Lawrence with his cane. Oh, Lord. You should have put a cane in this one like you did in the Milwaukee one. Or if it's really Milwaukee, it could be. I honestly believe that's Utah. Salt Lake City. But if it is Milwaukee, well, here's another cane. So they then said that Lawrence was guilty or was insane. So the Richard Lawrence, which is now so this guy is dead. 1861. He's dead 100 years. He has a Wikipedia article, and I don't. Well, anyway, he was a house painter. Who was a sitting Lincoln. Oh, this is where you get the sitting Lincoln from, because this guy was the first person known to attempt to assassinate a sitting president. Okay, I get it now. You guys are having so much fun with this, telling us how you solved it and really didn't. This happened outside anyway. Lawrence was born in England, most likely in around 1800. Oh, we don't know when this guy was born either. Oh, there's got to be something funny about this guy in here. Lawrence later found work in the house. Historians have speculated that Lawrence's exposure to toxic chemicals used in the paint in the 1800s, including lead, antimony, chromate, sulfides, and barium, contributed to his mental illness. Okay, I guess we've now found the pollution aspect of this. All right. Okay, I'm not going to spend too much time on that because I just think that's a rabbit hole. Okay, so slavery. He basically ordered the troops in to squash slavery. The Dred Scott decision came down during his administration. In foreign affairs, he made some trade agreements with Spain, Russia, and the Ottoman Empire. The Turkish people. So there, you got all that. Let's see. So Jackson lobbied for the annexation of Texas. There's a story in the back of the book where they talk about Texas and how they just decided to take the whole thing. And there's some stories in the back of the book about the Louisiana Purchase as well. So he eventually died, and they buried him or put him in the tomb with his wife. He didn't have any kids. He ended up adopting a couple of kids. Well, anyway, I think that this image figure that we're looking at in The Secret, because of the age of the figure, the use of a spectacle, the petticoat on the head, the enlarged ear, the Seminole War, the red cheek on the face, the smallpox that he had, the boot nose, the 222s in the collar, I believe this to be Andrew Jackson. So let's just see, can and does it work? To solve this with this guy being the central figure to the puzzle. Okay, so lane 222. Remember I mentioned all the twos in that collar? Let's just say that you've discovered that this is Jackson, and you go to lane 222 Jackson. Just go to 222 Jackson. In fact, grab your little guy right now in your Googly Map thing and put him at 222 Jackson, because I'm going to do that right now. Take me a second. I got to go back. Got to type in 222 Jackson Drive. 222. Oh, I met the flying dragon. I don't want to be there. I want to be at 222 Jackson Drive. When we get over here, it won't take me long. Oh, remember there's a Randolph. Oh, Randolph Street. Oh, I didn't even notice that until now. Okay, I'm over at Millennium Park. I need to go back. So let's just go to 222 East Jackson Drive. So the Flying Dragon is actually on Monroe Street. And we talked about Monroe just a little minute ago. The Fountain of the Great Lakes is on South Michigan Avenue at the corner of East Jackson and South Michigan. So you're going to have right across the railroad tracks that Fountain of the Lakes that you were talking about, right? Okay. So then you go to 222 East Jackson Drive. I'll put my guy right there. I'm at 222 East Jackson Drive. I'm looking up at the Metropolitan Building. And I'm seeing a blue arc of lights. And I'm seeing that same pyramid structure and that blue roof that's in the image figure. And it tells me I need to look for a lane. And I'm not going to get into the whole Nathan Lane, Chicago, melodramatically stuff that you could easily get to. But if I swing around and I'm at that location, I basically can see a lane. Come on. A little bit further. I'm at 223. Screw it. I'm at 223 Jackson Street, and I've got all of these trees. And I'm not going to count them to try to figure how many damn trees there are and see where I need to be, because I've already found my orientation fountain. And I see this lane. And it's a lane because it's got trees on both sides of it. It's got there's trees everywhere. It's like a forest, if you will. It's a forest. So weight and roots extended together save this site of granite walls. Oh, yeah, exactly. Look at it. There's granite to the left, granite to the right, granite in front of me, granite in the back. There's granite everywhere. Wind swept halls. Okay, I'm looking at the bridge in front of me at 222, and I'm seeing all evidence that the wind is going to sweep through that tunnel that I can see where the train runs, right? Citadel in the night, a wingless bird ascended. A wingless bird we talked about was a wingless bird is a rail. A rail is going to ascend. Born of ancient dreams of flight. Birds are the oldest species on the planet. They're older than trains, by the way. And in fact, scientific evidence even shows now that birds originated from, or that dinosaurs originated from birds. So, of course, ancient dreams of flight. Now, beneath the only standing member of a forest to the south. Okay, I'm going to look at my guy again. I've got him on the street. I'm going to see if I can find the direction south. Oh, God, there's a lane, and it goes south. It goes south from here. I was just looking at the building. I was just looking at the Metropolitan Building, and I saw it. And then I looked at all the granite on that building. And then I looked to the north, and I saw, oh, my God, there's granite on that building. Oh, my. Look at all that granite. And then I looked to the railroad track, and there was all that granite. and there was granite everywhere. All right. So beneath the only standing member of a forest to the south. Okay, I'm going to look for the tallest member of the trees to the south. Let's try to figure out which tree would be the tallest. So go back to 223 Jackson, look to the south. Where is the largest tree trunk in that whole group of trees? Where is the largest of the trees at? Where is the tallest of those trees at? And you can see how much taller and bigger that one tree is. White stone closest at 12 paces from the west side. Okay, so now I'm going to just move myself, if you will, down that lane to that tallest tree, and guess what I'm going to see? Well, if I go back to the image figure, and this has been documented on many other places and channels, what are you going to see if you take that lane at 222 Jackson Street, follow it down to the tallest tree in the forest? There's a whole bunch. Don't have to count the damn trees and come up with the wrong number of trees. You just have to look back towards the Metropolitan Building and the Arc of Lights. What are you going to see? Well, you're going to see that structure of the railing and the little white stone that's in the G and H section. You're going to actually see that right in front of you. Okay, so you now see that. Well, what's the next instruction? The next instruction is white stone closest. Okay, you see the white stone on the railing, and it looks exactly like what you're seeing. You're looking up, you see the blue arc of light, you see the Metropolitan Building, you see the railroad tracks down below, you see the tunnel at 12 paces from the west side. Just go to that little white pyramid. Remember it talked about pyramids? How many go back to the image, folks. That rock is shaped like a pyramid, okay? How many pyramids did we see? How many pyramids do we have to see in the image above to tell us that a pyramid-shaped white structure was going to be important to finding this treasure? Well, I don't think it takes much more than that. And so get permission to dig out. Getting permission is to get a grant. Granting of permission you don't really need to get the permission. It's the confirmer of the grant that you're in the right park, you're in Grant Park. The get permission, the last two sentences in most of these tell you you're confirming that where you're at is the correct spot. And so I propose, and it is my wholehearted opinion, that your seated figure is Andrew Jackson. You take the lane 222, which is a lane off of 222 Jackson, where you see the arc of lights. You have the weights and route extended. Again, you can look at the walls that are the walls where the train tracks run on both sides. There are granite walls, and that is in your windswept hall. The wingless bird ascended is a rail to confirm that you're at a railroad track. And born of ancient dreams of flight, well, it can't be a steel rail. It has to be a bird, a real rail, if you will. And beneath the only standing member of a forest to the south. The directional clues are perfect in order to make this work. Again, you have the 222 in the collar that gives you the specific location. You have the arc of lights. I've got the picture of the little white stone closest. Somebody has decided to paint this stone green now. But I can just look at the shape of the freaking stone. It's the same shape of the windows in the image. It's the same. exact. Uh, in fact, I have a picture. I have a picture of the actual rail with the white stone on top of it that I found as a historical image. And if you go to my uh, thesecretsolve.wordpress.com, I have provided the actual the picture when it was a white stone, not when it's this little green one that they've changed it to, but I actually have a historic picture of it. And so you can't get out of that. All right, so in summary, that concludes my nice guy presentation of where I think the secret is, why I think it's there. If you want to continue to listen for the depravity of the secret, I will provide you some additional information starting at this point. And that is that the bus terminal for Chicago is basically where you could start this puzzle. And it's uh, also the place where the killer clown, also known as John Wayne Gacy, began his reign of terror in Chicago, where he ended up murdering at least 33 young men and boys. And his whole he was born in Chicago, lived in Chicago, and killed in Chicago. And his first victim was by the name of McCoy. And he went to Waterloo. He got involved in Kentucky Fried Chicken. Not making this stuff up. Kentucky Fried Chicken. Those birds do not ascend. He was also a high-ranking member in the Waterloo JCs. He was into wife swapping, like the other guy, Jackson. And he was involved in a number of assaults before he became what he eventually became. So he returned to Chicago in 1970. He had a curfew. He went to look at an exhibit. Where do you think the exhibit was that he went to look at on the fateful day where the switch triggered in his mind that he was going to become the killer clown? It was at the bus station. That's where his mind switched. And did I close that one out? Nope, I didn't. So Timothy Jack McCoy, the real McCoy, was raised in Iowa and Nebraska. And McCoy stops for a layover at the Greyhound bus station in the Loop. He was traveling home on January 3rd of 1972, and this is the first known victim. He took him back to his house and killed the boy, stabbing him in the chest. Investigators later find a large blood stain in the house. Anyway, okay. What you need to know about Timothy Jack McCoy is that Timothy Jack McCoy was picked up at the Greyhound bus station because John Wayne Gacy was in the area looking at. He was at the Civic Center in the Loop, and he was looking at a display of ice sculptures. And that's how he ended up picking up the first victim, Timothy McCoy. And so this is where you get into the weirdness of the the secret. And anyway, I'm just saying there's some weirdness here. Okay, folks, I think that's all the weirdness I need to include in this one. I just think that if you take another look at this, it's quite possible that you can use a different person sitting in that chair, one that matches the age of the person, that matches the facial lesions, the glasses, the petticoat, the ear, etc. And if you couple that with the one-to-one relationship between verses and images, you effectively solve the puzzle for the Chicago area. And what it does for you is it releases the verse that they've been talking about for years and years and years and years. It releases that verse to be used at the correct location for the puzzle it belongs with. Just as the Cleveland solve works perfectly using the verse, I guess we're verse 4, image 4, and just as image 2, verse 2 works for Boston, and how verse 5, image 5 works for Chicago, and how my proposal for image 1, verse 1 works for Portsmouth Square, and my Milwaukee solve works with the image and the verse matched. I think all of them work this way. And you don't have to account for a missing tree or a stump or a stumpy finger if you just use the right verse. And you don't even have to travel all the way looking for this and that and the other. In Cleveland, they merely had to go from a curve in the road not so far to find the columns. In fact, if you can't see the final destination objectively, either because of elevation change, in other words, you start at a high point and you go to a low point, or you start at a low point and you see something on the hill and you can't identify all of the individual things visually, I don't think you're in the right place. Because I don't think you have to drive 3 miles across town to find the next clue. I just don't think so. You may have to change elevation, as in the leg eater is down here in Montreal, and the final clue is up a hill, and you have to transverse, and the only way you can do it is maybe by driving a few roads to get there. Just as if in San Francisco, the only way to get from Russian Hill to Portsmouth Square is to transverse it, but you can see Portsmouth Square from the Russian Hill. So I don't know. All right, folks, that's going to conclude. I'm up to 1 hour. I don't want to be over an hour. My presentation for this puzzle. I hope everybody has a great day. I'm going to try to whip one more of these out today. Thanks so much for joining, and I'm hitting the red button. I might come back and do a corollary to this using the back of the book. But I'm going to end this one now, and then I'm going to come back in 5 to 10 minutes, and I'm going to do a presentation of all the things in the back of the book that I think go with the Chicago puzzle.